It's 2025, if you hadn't noticed, and if you're anything like us, you've probably been trawling the classifieds and auctions for that dream car of yours. You know, new year, new you and all. And you've probably got something in mind, but before you pull the trigger, I thought it'd be a good idea to go over the cars that have proved particularly popular, or trending, if you like, on PistonHeads over the last 12 months. And to help me out, I've got the Classic Valuer co-founder, Giles Gunning, to run over some juicy market insights. Giles, welcome to PistonHeads.
Juicy market insights, I'll try and deliver. Good to be here.
I thought I'd try and make numbers sound more exciting. And to help with that, we're at the home of the TWR Supercat. Now, unfortunately, the prototype isn't here. It's in America getting ready for some show. But we do have the bare chassis behind us. These are the cars that are going to be turning into some of the customer cars later on. But we'll get onto that in just a bit. Now, how this works is that we've scoured some key data points on PistonHeads and lined that up with some information from the Classic Valuer to come up with 3 different categories. They are classics, modern classics, and future classics. We've also got 3 different price points. We've got a budget option of around 30 grand. We've got a mid-tier, around 6 figures, and we've got a sky's the limit, 7 figures and above. Now, before you contact your lawyer, this isn't financial advice. We're literally just going over cars that have proven really quite popular on PistonHeads over the last year and are cars that you might want to keep an eye on for the next 12 months and maybe beyond. First up, the classics. Now for this, we've put the cutoff at 1985 and back. Now, it's not an exact science, it's really just the year that all of us could agree on here at PH Towers. And our first pick is the Peugeot 205 GTI. Now, these have been hugely popular for quite a while now, particularly with the 1.9, and that's because they're lightweight, rorty, and delightfully analog, all attributes that are particularly popular in today's day and age. And from what we can see, their popularity is only going up. But Giles, how's the market looking?
You're right to spread out the 1.6s versus the 1.9s. 1.6 today, 5 to 15 grand on average. Market's topping out just about £30,000. 1.9s, a little bit higher. Generally here, 10 to 20,000. We saw a car sold at the French auction house for £69,000 not long ago. Low mileage, early car. Price run on both of these so far hasn't gone ballistic, but we can start to see it tick up and up.
In fact, 1.6s are actually a really great way to get in if you just want to scratch that 205 itch. We had one sell on PistonHeads auctions last year for around about £9,000. So if it's a 205 GTI that you really want, you can't quite stretch to a 1.9. 1.6s are still very much in that category below 5 figures for now. On to our next pick, and we've gone for the Datsun 240Z, or 240Z if you're in America, or Fairlady Z as they were sold in Japan. They're properly rare cars here in Britain though. While they were really very popular abroad, they produced 168,000 I believe in total, only 2,000 came to the UK. And it's hard to see why they weren't more popular here because, you know, straight six, they look utterly beautiful and they were said to be considerably better built than their European rivals. Now, all of these attributes mean that they were really popular with tuners and people are paying a serious premium to get hold of a tidy example, right?
Big time. Prices on these have doubled in the past 10 years. 10 years ago, 10 to 20,000. Today, 20 to 30. Like you say, one from the tuners, we saw one sell last year for over 100,000, £117,000. Big money.
Yes, they really are quite a lot more than they used to be, but this next car is on another planet, really. For our sky's the limit option, it's the Lamborghini Miura. Now, I know what you're thinking, anything 60s, V12 supercar, an Italian, sounds like it will be a surefire bet, but there just appears to be a little bit of a cooling of the market recently. Ferrari 365 GTB4s, for instance, they seem to be leveling off, as do the really high-end stuff like 250 GT short wheelbases, but for some reason, Giles, the Lamborghini Miura just seems to be powering through.
I'm waiting for short wheelbases to get to about £1 million, and then I'm going to save up very hard and get into it. You're right, they're 50s and 60s cars. They've fallen about 10% each. 2024 versus 2023, but then again, every single decade when you look across the car market fell in 2024 versus the prior year. Miuras, a base Miura has pretty much tripled in value in the past decade or so. Now you're looking around 1.5 million 10 years ago. 500k wasn't uncommon. Again, you work through the Miura S's, the Miura SVs. SVs are anywhere from £2 million upwards. We actually saw an XJK car sold for 4 million last year.
And so what is it about Miuras then? Because if, we've seen some hugely desirable classic Ferraris that just aren't quite getting there, why is it that the Miuras just kind of fighting through that?
I think there's multiple things. One of the big things we see in our data is when you look across all the big manufacturers, 2024 versus 2023, only 4 of them rose in price. The biggest of those rises was Lamborghini. Whether it's Diablos, Countach's, Miuras, there is a broader Lamborghini point that's just driving these values and demand for them northwards.
It's just crazy. People absolutely love a Lamborghini now. Now, before we move on to the next section, I've got a rogue 4th one to throw in, and it is the Jaguar XJS. Now, I've had a look at the data. They don't appear to be hugely popular at the moment, but here's my reasoning. First of all, the Jaguar XJS, yes, they sold a huge amount of them, but they're not all in the best of nick. Secondly, we're obviously at TWR at the moment, and they're hoovering up a lot of the really ratty ones to use for their Supercat build. Don't worry, XJS fans, they're not butchering them. Anything that doesn't get used for the Supercat often gets recycled or sent off to other specialists. So they're going to be sweeping up a lot of the cheap ones. And then you probably have also seen that Mr. Chris Harris now has an XJS. And need I say more? But really, Giles, how is the market looking on those at the moment? Is it kind of a good time to buy now before they go up, or will they ever go up?
The best comparison here is when you look at the market overall, from 2021 to today, it's about at the same price point. XJSs for some variants are double figures down over that period. So there's 2 schools of thought there. Either they're going to keep heading that way, or alternatively, I think you can tell a lot through social media, whether it's Harris, whether it's friends in the group chat. Increasingly, XJSs are appearing on my feeds, in my messages, and that is normally a good sign for the future.
Do you know also as well that I, having grown up with Japanese cars, those have always been kind of my dream. XJS has never really been on my radar, but since seeing the work that TWR's done, now that Harris has got one, starting to find them actually quite cool. So I'm sure that if other people are feeling that, you might start to see a change, and who knows. Where interest seems to be shifting though is the modern classic. These are the cars that are pinned on the bedroom wall of the millennial like me and are now hot property with the next generation of car collector. First up, we've gone for the Renault Sport Clio 182, one of the great pocket rockets of the 21st century. In fact, it was actually voted the 2nd best hot hatch of the last 25 years by PHers back in 2023, finishing 2nd only to the Toyota GR Yaris, which may get a mention a little bit later. Now, obviously, the one that really attracts collectors is the trophy with its special SAG stampers. But to be honest, you can get 95% of the car with a 172 or a 182 Cup. Now, Giles, we've seen crazy numbers from trophies in recent years. How's the market looking for 25, do you think?
Trophies, we've seen them up at 20k. It's not uncommon though to see them around 10k. We've seen some sell for as low as 6 as well. So there is a really big price spread within there, particularly at the lower end. A base 182, not uncommon to have them around 5,000. Price trend on these is really interesting. The trophies are not climbing as much as you would have thought. Not far off flat. The base 182s, they've actually doubled since pre-COVID.
But which is really interesting actually, because if you look at some of the cars that have sold on PistonHeads auctions lately, we had a 182 trophy sell with 118,000 miles on the clock last year for about £9,000. We had a 182 Cup, very, very similar mileage for 5.5. Just thought we ought to know. Moving on, or back for this one actually, because we've gone for the Lotus Carlton. Now this was a hugely important car, comfortably the world's fastest production saloon when it came out in 1990 with a top speed of 176 miles per hour from a Vauxhall, tuned by Lotus obviously. Now these have been hugely popular for a long time, but there was a sale in an auction last year where one sold for £111,000, again for a Vauxhall. Giles, do I have to spend £111,000 to get a Lotus Carlton?
10 years ago, you'd have paid 20 grand. Today you're walking out of a dealership, if you're paying double that, you are the one laughing at the dealer. Prices today are 50, 60 grand on average, but you're dead right. We've seen 2 examples now sell at over triple figures. Big money. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more in the future.
It's worth it though, because they are unbelievably cool. I mean, I've never driven one, but just seeing a Vauxhall with big box arches, and it's still so quick today. Anyway, on to our final one, and this actually probably won't come as a surprise at all. It is the Ferrari Enzo. Now, admittedly, you could actually put quite a lot of cars in this category. You could go Maserati MC12, you could go Lamborghini Rebenton. We've actually seen that's really quite popular on PistonHeads. However, the Enzo, not only did they produce more of them, but we've seen a significant rise in interest over 2023 and 2024 on PistonHeads.com. And it's not hard to see why. Naturally aspirated V12, named after the founder of one of the most iconic brands of all time and developed by Michael Schumacher. And crucially, there's no hybrid system, which is proving quite a costly fix on its successor.
I remember the first time I saw one of these, clear as day, Hammersmith flyover. I was walking along the pavement there. There was a BP garage on the left, and I have never sprinted so fast to chase after a car. This for me, as my age, is right up there. 5 years ago, £2 million. Today, most are around £3.5 million. Big money, but they're also highly mileage sensitive. If you get one in Nero, they made low double figures. Very, very desirable. A lot of them have been repainted into black to try and lean into that.
Wow, I didn't know that. Probably one thing to look out for, not that I'm an expert on buying used Ferrari Enzos, but if I remember correctly, that the launch control on that, you could get 3 launches and then you would completely knacker the clutch. So if you do buy an Enzo, maybe you give it a go once and then never, ever, ever again, unless you have the money to get a new clutch, which you probably do. And finally, the modern classic. Now, these are cars that are going to go down as all-time greats, but aren't old enough to be considered a proper classic just yet. We're calling the cutoff at this at 2010, and we're starting things off with the Toyota GR Yaris. The winner of our best hot hatch of the last 25 years vote, and for good reason. This was a car that was built to go rallying, even though it technically never would. There was a regulation change, and the current cars that you see now look like GR Yarises, but they're space frame chassis with some bits of Yaris bolted to them. But anyway, we still got an all-wheel drive system, we got some really good rally tech and punchy 3-cylinder turbo engines. This is one of the rare examples where the hype around it was justified, and it also led to Toyota's order books filling up, and you just couldn't get one for such a long time. 5 years on, and values are still holding strong, right, on a GR Yaris?
It's super impressive, right? The early cars when they came out in 2020, 2021, normally those cars tend to be about 40% of their original value. GR Yarises, they're at 80%. Today, anywhere from 25 to 35k, depending on age and mileage. They're super, super strong on residuals.
And it's crazy because we've had a few go up for auction on PistonHeads auctions, and we had one sell pretty recently. It was relatively low mileage at 5,000 or so, but we sold it for £27,000. So really, really strong value. It seems like something that is at least going to hold its value for a while. And you also get a slight discount on a nearly new, really great hot hatch icon. Obviously the Yaris is brilliant, but they were so overhyped that some people are a little bit sick of them. So is there any kind of alternatives that kind of for people who want something a little bit different to a GR Yaris?
Can I go a bit off piste here?
Please.
BMW i8. They're a decade plus old now. We've seen a few sell last year for sub 35 grand. I saw one on the road last weekend. They haven't aged a day. They are exquisite. And if you think about where they place in terms of technological evolution, they're a very interesting car to watch for the future.
And do you remember when they came out? They were like concept cars. They were utterly jaw-dropping. I agree with you. I think they still look amazing. And then compare it with how electric BMWs look today. Right, so everybody's pouncing on 997, 911 GT3s at the moment because, you know, they were the last to come with hydraulic steering and also Metzger engines, two things that just come together perfectly on a 911. But what we've noticed is that 997 GT2s are climbing just as quickly. Now, we saw a similar thing with the 996 GT2. They were dirt cheap for quite a long time, and then all of a sudden they exploded and are now considerably more expensive. So is it a similar thing that's going on with the 997 GT2 at the moment, Giles? And is there any difference between buying a regular 997 GT2 and getting one of the ultra crazy RSs.
What's interesting here is the US versus the UK. In the US, these are absolutely rocketing in price and trading at a significant premium. In the UK, they haven't moved drastically over the past 10 years. 10 years ago, 90 to maybe 140 you'd be paying for one of these. Today, anywhere from 100 to 150. GT2 RSs, double that, you're at 250 to 350. The interesting thing here is, does the UK follow the US's price trend and see those cars trading at a premium over there and follow that trend?
Yeah, serious money indeed. So I guess in that case then maybe now's quite a good time to look at GT2. So if you find yourself going through PistonHeads auctions and you come across a GT2 or even something completely different and you want to make the costs more manageable, then you should get in touch with our partners Charles and Dean Finance to discuss your options. Once you settle on a car, simply click Get a Finance Quote, plug in your details, and as a broker, Charles and Dean will scour its panel of lenders to find you the best deal on your dream car. And I'll leave a link down to that in the description so you can go and get started. And that might come in especially handy for our next car. Now, it's not quite as obvious as our previous modern classic choice, but it's still a supercar icon. It's of course the Lexus LFA. Now, when these originally came out, people really didn't know what to make of it because Lexus had never built a supercar before, and then out of nowhere you had this carbon fiber bodied GT with a screaming V10 that wailed like an old Formula One car. But the thing is, what we've noticed on PH is that these are starting to really creep up in popularity as collectors are starting to cotton on to just how special these things are. And I think prices are starting to kind of creep towards the £1 million mark right now.
I remember vividly sitting at my desk one day, and pre-COVID these were 350 on average. And I remember looking through the results as they come in every night, and I saw one of these about £886,000 sold over in the US. When did that happen? Yeah. When on earth did that happen? It dipped a tiny bit since then. That was a bit of an outlier sale. Today, 700k on average for one of these. What I think is interesting is what you touched on. A lot of value and price appreciation comes down to the brand prestige. Lexus's next most expensive model is, an LC500, barely triple figures. There is a huge delta between that second place car and the LFA. Then again, Nürburgring's are £1.5 million.
Absolutely, but it was even bigger when it originally came out because you had, what was it, the RX must have been the most expensive thing, and they were 340 odd grand I think when they were new in 2010. So they're still going up in value by quite a bit, but they're actually still proving quite a divisive car. Not everybody loves the LFA. I think they're incredible, by the way. So are there any alternatives for similar money?
I don't like the LFA. I don't get on board with it.
Giles,
criminal, I know, Cam. My alternative here would be a Murcielago SV. Ticks the Lamborghini price appreciation box. Big poster car, V12. And also, when you look at the modern collectors that are coming in to the market now, when those guys were growing up, seeing a Mercy SV, I remember the first time I saw one, coming down the road, I can remember exactly where I was. That's going to drive a lot of values in the future.
I'm glad you brought the LFA thing up right at the end of our chat, because if you had said it at the beginning, this might have been a slightly frostier interview. Now, we would normally end things there. However, I've thrown in a rogue fourth category, and it's literally just everything Japanese. Now, we all know that Japanese cars from the 80s and 90s have gone crazy in recent years, particularly over COVID. Things like Subaru Imprezas, Mitsubishi Evos, Mazda RX-7s, Nissan GTRs, and Toyota Supras have all gone nuts. But I think things have maybe started to cool down a little bit. What's the Japanese market looking like at the moment?
Exactly right. I remember doing a presentation, maybe 2021 at Bicester Scramble, and there was a graph, and it was 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, showing Japanese cars year after year, rise after rise. That's topped out now. Past 2 years though, we've seen Japanese cars fall 10% year on year. As the saying goes, there's a setback, a setup for a comeback. Time will tell.
Which is good, because I would really like an Impreza, so maybe now's the time to jump in. So there you have it, 9-ish cars that have been trending on PistonHeads over the last 12 months. And I just want to thank TWR for hosting us for this little chat, and also Giles from the Classic Valuer for coming along and providing some very helpful insights. You can actually go to theclassicvaluer.com and see results for loads of collector cars and price trends as well. And don't forget, if you go to pistonheads.com and go to auctions, you can see the results of all of our auctions there too, just so you're better prepared when going in to bid. So with all that in mind, what's stopping you from getting your dream car?